for me, when you said Joe Kukathas come, I'm like, what? my impression when I first saw, my jaw dropped. I couldn't believe. First of all, how talented you are.
Oh my
Across the
gosh.
roof. I'm like, what? The next thing is the bravery in this country. I don't mean to speak ill of our country. I love my country.
It's okay. I can speak ill of our country for you.
She does. It just gets my hair standing in the back of my neck. But I think what I wanted to say is you are I appreciate, I'm sure a lot of people appreciate that you say things, you play out things that we have been raised not to even go there. And I'm looking at you and I say, sorry for my French, where does she find the balls? When I think, like you said today, the subject is bravery, right?
So my subject title is Comedic Bravery.
Oh, okay.
Now I'll touch the bravery part. She can do the comedic part because I have nothing to do with comedy. For me, my impression was, I think officially I want to thank you because it's like a spark in a country that there's so much taboo. Like you make fun of politicians, you make fun of. I think maybe it's just me or the segment of people we are told to hush up, don't look there, and you are pushing the boundary with your comedy. And I'm telling you, oh my God, it shows that there is some light still alive in the country.
But maybe it was ignorance on my part, right? I didn't know that we weren't allowed to do such things, and I didn't know we weren't allowed to say such things. And maybe I had a kind of interesting upbringing in that my father went from working for Radio TV Malaya to then being in the Foreign Service. So there we were working for the government, everywhere in the world. But he was head of information. But he became very disillusioned, post in the 70s.
Right.
And he used to call himself, person in charge of misinformation. And so I think, our house was always full of politics.
That's what you used, right?
Yes, which is where that came from.
The Department of Misinformation.
Yeah. So I think I grew up in a household that was kind of political, and my dad was part of the Malaysian government, but critical of it. And I remember once when we were kids, we were living in Hong Kong, and my dad didn't want us to have a TV because previously we were living in Australia, and he said we've all become TV addicts. So he said no more TV. So we moved to Hong Kong, and it was like no TV. So he used to make us do things. So, he'd write a book, we'd illustrate it, or he'd make us write stories. And I remember one book he wrote, we didn't know any of the characters, but they were all politicians, but he gave them all kind of like silly names. And he always used to say that politicians were there to serve us, and that the emperor's new clothes, that it was our responsibility to sort of remind them sometimes. So I think I grew up with that. And so then when I came back to Malaysia at the age of 21, for the first time I kind of realized things about the country. That, for example, the institutionalized racism, the taboos about talking about religion, or that you can only say that if you are this race, you can't say that if you are that race. And for me, it didn't make sense and I had studied politics and philosophy. So for me, it was, I was coming at things from a humanitarian point of view. Right. So I can't at the age of 21 then change, who I am and how I saw the world. Yeah.
Like of late, I was studying something yesterday, and they said in America it's happening again. They're institutionalizing people. I thought that's the country that will hold the freedom of speech. Now, with almost every system, they are saying, actually, it was a documentary too. It's about the illusion of choice. They say you don't have a choice. No. They kill you out. And I think someone that goes out and I'm not saying speaking against it, speaking in the absence of it, that's bravery to me. When the fear is not present, I don't think there is anything as bravery. I think just the absence of fear, that you kind of obviously emperor's new clothes, you just look and say, what is that? I think bravery is when you're already oppressed.
Yes.
And it's happening all over the world. It's like, and I think it's going to lead to incredible mental decline, mental well-being.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. Yeah, you can see this kind of more kind of as people in power structures are trying to cling to power because they feel that there's a pushback. So now they're pushing back even harder. Right. So I think that is happening.
They're saying this. Sorry, I see the subject. Just close up. I have a feeling the day the brain is oppressed, the day that I'm not allowed to think, or I'm regulated to think there is going to be a collapse in civilization. We have proved it over and over and over and over again. And I think like what you do, like what Robin Williams did, and a lot of people who did, they are pushing the boundary. Like I've been to LA, I went to all the what do you call them? Comedy clubs.
Comedy clubs,
Comedy club
yeah.
I've been. And the things they say, and you go like, wow. Even in America, they have to go into a club. In that seclusion, they could make fun of their politicians and all that.
Actually, it reminds me that when I was, I think I must have been about 10 or 11, my dad took us to watch Lenny Bruce, a film about Lenny Bruce. And I mean, now I think back on it, I think now I understand why maybe I became the way I became. But, you know, I remember watching this film about Lenny Bruce. I think Dustin Hoffman played him, and he was a man who really spoke up, right? And suffered, I think, for speaking up. Often arrested, and yet, you know, he was the hero of that film. So I think for me, well, you know, I also grew up feeling such people were heroes because they spoke up, they used comedy. And I think my family are great fans of irony, great fans of absurdism. My mother was always one who was, you know, always used to say, look out for the underdog. So I think you kind of grow up in that kind of, that's your society that you grew up in. I didn't grow up in a society that told me you can't say it. I grew up with people around me who always said to me, speak your mind.
But how do you deal with that more so in this country?
So that's why it was a surprise to me.
Sometimes when you're speaking, I'm like, oh my God, she's brave. That means I'm thinking there's going to be a repercussion.
But do you also think that's because you grew up in like Kampong, in Johor, with like everything that sort of lifted you up, told you to be quiet, as opposed to you, Joe, you grew up sort of not just in Malaysia, all over the world, that just basis of how you grew up, the way you perceive it is different.
No, but she's still confronted with the current reality.
True.
That's all I'm asking.
True.
But I think your formative years are very important, right? So how you see the world and how you see your place in the world. I didn't feel that my place in the world was a place where I had to be quiet about things. And, you know, I'm not a noisy person. I'm not a loud person. I think quite introverted in many ways. But I think also growing up, thinking about justice, thinking about fairness, thinking about right and wrong, and always being told you should always speak up when there's something wrong. Wow. So I think I grew up with that. And as I said, so at the age of 21, I couldn't change. I think some people used to say to me, oh, you shouldn't say that, or why do you say that? And I think that when I formed my theatre company, it was because Operation Lalang had happened a few years before that, where we were told you can't say this, you can't say that. You know, people were arrested. I think my dad always felt kind of cheated that he wasn't arrested because at that point, you know, he had been also, I mean, one of the first things I did when I came back from university was I helped edit my dad's book. And my dad had set up a company called K Das Inc. and he was writing books that were political. He wrote things that were extremely critical of Dr. Mahathir. He was before that writing for the Far Eastern Economic Review, and then they had to print some retractions of things that my father wrote, and that really upset him because his sources were all verified. He stood by what he wrote, but because they kept banning the review in Malaysia, so Dow, who owned the review, said, well, look, we're losing money, so we have to say, actually, we retract this. So he left that magazine and he opened his own publication firm. And the first book he wrote was a bestseller. It was called The Musa Dilemma. It was when Musa left the cabinet of Dr. Mahathir. So that was my political education as well. I remember sitting on the floor with the galley proofs in front of me, going through it with the red pen. So it was a quick introduction to the minutiae of Malaysian politics, where you saw them as people and very fallible people, and some people who made some really bad mistakes. And then Operation Lalang happened, and so many people I knew were arrested, including somebody who, my housemate.
Right.
Oh.
So he was arrested, and later, when he was released 3 years later, they said, oh, sorry, we made a mistake. And that was it. But 3 years in Kamunting.
Right?
Yes, 89, yeah.
89.
So, you know, things like that kind of affect you and influence you, and then you feel, well, and that's why we started Instant Cafe in 1989, because everybody was saying you can't say things. And I think myself and a few friends felt, well, how we do want to say things. There are things on our mind. And of course, we knew comedy was the best way to do it because, you know, they say that when you do comedy, the other person laughs and then the truth slips in.
Right.
So,
Oh my God.
because your mouth is wide
You
open.
can always say, I was just joking.
Yes,
joking,
yes.
Joking.
Actually, yes. I mean, for me, the power of the clown is very important,
Right,
in all societies. And I got a lot of people telling me also, oh, it's not Malaysian culture. And I always love to remind people wayang kulit is Malaysian culture. And wayang kulit has the clown characters, and everybody loves the clown characters because they're the ones who are making jokes about the people in power or puzzled. Why are they doing things like that? Why are they ruining our lives? Why are they going to war? It's the clown characters who say that. And one of the things I love about the clown characters in Southeast Asia is that they are the lowest of the low, right? They are, they're the poorest of the poor. But actually the backstory is that they are the sons of God.
Right.
Oh my God.
Wow. Wow. You see, in the study of like mental health, and especially the Asian version, the Eastern philosophy, there's a word called moksha. Moksha means liberation, but it also means freedom,
Yes.
That I free myself from every conditioning so my eyes are clear to see. And if that freedom is removed, and I'm very surprised, in America they're doing it. I even went to the West to teach. I couldn't teach it here. What I wanted to exactly say, it was unsafe to say here. Not unsafe, I'm not saying anything rebellious, but I'm saying I didn't feel safe. So I went to Sweden, I went to Canada, I went to all over the world and I was speaking. Because the principle is, if my freedom to see, perceive is not present, I am not healthy.
Yes.
But I think this government's view is different. Now, you have to control the view for the safety. And I sometimes think they are the one who's exaggerating the sensitivity.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. But, it's so interesting, this idea of if you don't speak, you get ill. And actually, the Malay traditional arts, this is the basis of the Malay traditional arts, that theatre and performance and art is to heal you and to heal society. So I remember encountering this in the 90s with through a friend of mine, Aiden Koo, who works for an organization called Pusaka, and they document traditional performances. So he invited me to go and attend some of these performances in Kelantan. And we have such a negative view of Kelantan, but Kelantanese are just deeply spiritual people. They rejected kind of UMNO back in the old days because UMNO was becoming so materialistic. And they said, the early leaders of PAS at least said, well, there's something more to life than just material wealth, right? Which is sort of the very Era Mahathir approach to life. I went to a Mind Putri performance. And Mind Putri is an art form where if somebody in your village is sick, they come and say, look, we're not well. And usually the wellness is related to their mental health. But they come and say, I've been getting headaches, or I've been suffering in this physical way. But they always know the physical suffering comes from a mental suffering. Right. And so they do a performance, which is called Main Putri, where the shaman of the village, working with the rabab player, invoke the spirits. The patient is put in the space. So they build a stage. So the stage is there. The patient is in the stage. Above the stage is what they call the lantai, or the roof, right? So this is heaven and earth and sky, and in between. And then the rabab kind of invokes the spirits. And that person then goes through a transformation where they are healed. Right. And I remember the person who was there, who was ill, was somebody who was transgender, and who had felt all her life living in the kampong, no problem being transgender, because traditionally Malay society has been very open to people of different genders, and like Buddhist society recognizes 9 genders, in fact, right? But now, of course, in contemporary life, we begin to reject the idea of differently gendered people. So she was suffering through a great depression. So in the healing process, in the performance then was to heal her. And this is a very folk art, which is never got turned into a courtly system. So the folk principles remain, that the idea is to heal you. But also that if you are watching the performance and you are going through your own trauma or depression or any kind of mental illness, you can feel some angin, right? So the idea of angin is very important, that when you're sick, it's because your angin, your chi, your prana, the dance of the winds is blocked. So the performance unblocks you. And then you feel liberated, you feel free. And that's the state of moksha too. Yep. So in fact, this is exactly what performance is for in the traditional arts, in Malay traditional arts. But we've lost touch with that because it kind of has been rejected. And it's not part of our national culture, when actually this is what should be part of our national culture.
But I think you are carrying it on. We love.
But yeah, I was
heal.
gonna say, I feel like in essence, right?
So
when
she's
you
a healer.
Yeah, when you go to like a comedy show, I just went to one recently, you know, just with like an open mic, and like the Malay comedians were acknowledging that Indian people are institutionally, like, you know, I don't even know whether I should say what I want to say.
Institutionalized racism.
Yes. Yeah, and there is violence against them, and they were saying it, and I was like, oh my gosh. It just, you feel that breath out, because you see it too. I'm not like losing my mind here. We all see it, we all feel it, and everybody laughs because it's true.
Yeah. I mean, the other performance which I love, which is also a Kelantanese and Terengganu art form, is actually exists everywhere, but it's special up there. Is Wayang Kulit, and as I said earlier, with Wayang Kulit, the clown characters, they're the ones who are always speaking the truth in a very comedic way. I mean, because it basically tells the story of the Ramayana or the Mahabharata, and of course, we're interested in those gods and demons fighting each other. But when those gods and demons fight, who suffers? The ordinary people. And the two clowns are the ordinary people. They are saying, why is this happening to us? Can you stop fighting? And they talk about issues of the day, and people go to Wayang to watch them.
Yep.
Yeah.
Actually, my time when I was young is when it ended. Up to like 7, 8, 9 years old, I still remember it being around. Then it kind
Even in Mersing, was there
in
any?
In Mersing, they had all the shows, and we had the like what she's saying. We had that living, but it has been gone for so long.
It's still there in pockets, but the thing is, it's not.
It's still there.
But you see, it's just that it's not. I mean, there was one the master I went to watch in Kelantan, Pat Dola. He was so special. He was amazing. And he created all these kind of very contemporary puppets as well. He was quite well known for having puppets that were very sexy, like a lady in a tight kabaya. She would jiggle it, so she would, her hips would move. And he had an Elvis puppet and all the rest of it. But as well as all the contemporary, all the traditional puppets. And people loved him because of his contemporary characters. But he couldn't make a living from this. So I mean, when I say it became unsupported, before that your community would support you, but as we kind of move towards a certain kind of materialistic development, where's the community that will support you? Because everybody's being told what's more important is to go and work in a factory and produce, what are those things called that we were so famous for making for computer chips. Right? And so then communities sort of broke up a little bit. And he ended up going to Singapore and working in the construction industry, bricklaying. So because he needs to make a living, other people went to work in the cropot factories. Whereas before that, the structure of society was during the most of the year you were a fisherman. You went out and you fished. You made a living from fishing. During monsoon season, you can't fish. Right. So, of course, during monsoon season, that's when you make your puppets. That's when you tell the stories. That's when you do wayang as well. Right. So then, we're seasonal. We're following our own seasons. Right. But the seasons of capitalism ignores the seasons that are present in a country. It is its own season. So then we don't think seasonally anymore, except when it's durian, of course.
I think capitalism, for me, I am beginning to coin a word called we're still building the pyramid.
Actually, my favorite term for capitalism is crapitalism.
Crapitalism? No, but it's coming up. It's coming up with the banks and what it's doing. It's beginning to show up. But I want to say this quote. One quote kept coming up. Like Hafiz said, I heard God laughing. They say the ultimate state of moksha is you burst out laughing at the joke that has been played on to you. Not that you are a joke.
Yeah.
That the joke that has been played. But I think in order to go there, we need to be brave. And I think bravery is not a simple commodity. Because they trigger our fight and flight. They trigger our survival.
Yeah.
So in order to go there, I think maybe comedy is and I think comedy is the only door, the last door. Once you close that door, it's over.
Actually, there's another really lovely origin story, right? So the Japanese origin story, that is when the earth, at the beginning of the world, in a way, there was a sun goddess and there was the wind god, and they were brother and sister. But the wind god was very naughty, and he was always teasing his sister, giving her a hard time. And finally, she just had enough of this male toxic energy. And she said, you know what, I've had enough. And she said, I'm leaving. And she went into a cave and she rolled a massive boulder in front of the cave. So of course, the earth is plunged into darkness. And so the people of the earth are like, oh, come out, we need you. The crops are dying. Life is dying. Please come out. And she's like, no, I've had enough, and nobody supported me when he was teasing me. Now you want my help? No. So all the priests are outside her cave, all the citizens outside her cave, trying to figure out what to do. And there's one particular priestess, right, who was there with them. And so she kind of looks around at all these assembled, mostly men, and says, well, we need to make her come out. How do we make her come out? We must make her curious. We must make her want to come out. So she starts dancing. This priestess starts dancing outside the cave, and she dances and dances and dances, and just to have fun, and she lifts her skirt up above her head. And she's not wearing anything underneath it. And everybody starts laughing because she's being vulgar, she's being funny. They all start laughing, and they can't stop laughing. And the more they laugh, the more she dances. Of course, the sun goddess inside the cave hears this laughter, and she can't FOMO, right? She's feeling, well, what's going on? So she can't stand her curiosity any longer. So she rolls open the stone, and the sun comes back into the earth. So what creates that light is laughter. And that's why laughter is very important, right, for us.
Maybe that's our sanity.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, we always talk about how laughter is the medicine. And me and my best friend, this is one quote. I brought it up here before, but it's by Amanda Seales. And she always says, when life sucks and you can't look for the lesson, look for the laugh.
Yeah.
And sometimes when things are so bad, I look to my bestie and I'm like, should we just laugh about it? And then we just laugh.
No, I think the starting is laughter, if I make a comment. But you must gravitate to that which blocked the laughter in the first place.
Yeah. Yes.
And that requires bravery. And I think we have been threatened in every way possible. And that is the unjust. I've been threatened. I've been threatened by my skin color, my this, my that. Like, yeah. And I think it has been employed. I'm very sad lately that it's employed in America. I always looked at it as a zone that I can probably say anything. Now they have cancel culture, they have this, they have that.
I know when we watch like Jay Leno and all back in the day, I'm like, oh my God, they can say that about their president. Like they can make all these jokes and whatever. And for us, like, everybody's so seditious here that you can't say anything.
Right. But maybe also was that Roosevelt quote, right? There's nothing to fear but fear itself.
Right.
So if you're brought up feeling fearful, it's very hard. In some ways, I would say the person who's really brave is the one who was fearful and then stepped out of that fear zone to do something.
Right.
So in many ways, I think out of ignorance or lack of fear, and I remember like when people said to me, oh, you can't do this sort of thing. And I remember people saying to me even things like, well, it won't work because Malaysians don't have a sense of humor. That really got me. That really upset me. And then I remember somebody telling me, oh, things like irony are very British. I was like, have you ever read Japanese literature? Have you read Indian stories? They're so full of irony. I mean, Japanese woodcuts, the humor in them. So I said, no, I think, humor is a universal thing. It's not a Western thing. But when people try to stop you from doing something, they often will, politicians in particular would invoke the West. Oh, that's a Western value. Why you bring these Western values into our society? They say as they wear their Armani suits, right? And I think, why do we want to borrow the worst of places? We are, cultures are not confined to nation. I think nationhood for me is a really damaging concept. It should be just a useful construct. But most of the time, the idea of nation is used to oppress people, to stop movement, to stop migrations, which are naturally occurring things, which have been naturally occurring for hundreds and thousands of years. I think human beings are as nomadic as animals are. So when you stop that, you create again a very unjust system, and you create something which is also quite artificial. And more money is spent on policing our borders than there is in actually making life better for people.
Yep.
Because there's this belief that if you don't have such heavy policing at borders, that there'll be chaos. But in fact, it's only a way to control the population. It's not a way to actually take care of the population. Actually, my brother is a philosopher. And he's written a wonderful book called Immigration and Freedom. So he's looking at the idea of immigration from the point of view that actually immigration should be looked at through the lens of freedom,
right?
Not through the lens of control.
Like, have you ever been in a space in Malaysia that you say, "No, I want to leave. I can't do this."
Yes.
You have been there.
It happened once. And it happened after the cowhead incident. I don't know if you remember that cowhead incident. So some years ago, the Menteri Besar of Selangor, a number of things had happened. There had been these riots in Kampung Medan.
I think,
It was a series of quite racialized incidents.
Right.
People had done things to a temple. There was retaliation by doing things to a mosque. It was a lot of ugliness and racial tension. And the culmination of this was a group of people in Shah Alam dragged a cow's head, right, through the streets and threw it, a group of Malay people, and threw it at the gate of the chief minister of Selangor. And then when he was at the gate, there are videos of the mostly men kicking the cow's head. And I think the thing that got me was this little boy, must be about 10, also there, kicking the head, shouting, obscenities. And I just thought, what have we become? It really was very upsetting, not just because I'm a Hindu. I'm not a good Hindu in many ways, and I don't follow a lot of precepts of Hinduism. But for me, it was that you're disrespecting the symbols here of the sacredness of the cow by doing this, and nobody's calling you up on it, and that you are teaching young people that this is okay to do this. And the ugliness of that incident really affected me. And I remember I was at my house, and I said to one of my really good friends, I said, I think I want to leave. And he got very angry with me and it kind of lectured me a little bit and said, if people just leave, then nothing ever changes. And I said to him, look, I've done a lot. I've said a lot over the years, and I don't say this lightly, but now I just want to say that this kind of thing really makes me want to leave. Of course, I also don't have any option to leave. It's not like, people offering me, a passport to another country, and I don't have the kind of resources to leave. But I just wanted to express the fact that this kind of thing is what makes me feel I can't live here. And it took a long time to get past that. But what happened is I went to an exhibition by an artist called Anurendra Jagadeva. And he's a really wonderful artist and also a friend of mine. And I love his work. And there was, one of his artworks was a massive cow's head, which had been severed. And it was lying on a butcher's block, right? And you could see the redness that came from his neck. But the expression on the cow's head was so peaceful. It just was lying there. It's dead. But it has not lost its dignity. You cannot take away something by how you treat it. That cow still lived a life of great dignity. You can do whatever you like to it because it knew itself. Yeah. So when I saw that painting, I just thought, I need to have this painting in my house. And I said to my friend, I really want this painting. And he said, somebody already bought it. I was like, never mind. And a few years later, I went to another one of his exhibitions, and the painting was still there. I said, hey, I thought it was sold. And he said, no, that guy never bought it. So I said, okay, this is because I'm supposed to buy it. And he said, I'd be so happy if you had it. Because I told him how I'd felt. And that artwork is called Portrait of My Father as a Dead Cow.
Wow. Oh my God.
It's a very powerful piece of work. So I put it in my house because that for me is a reminder,
Okay. You see, one of the story, the incident, the kicking of the cow's head, one is the gesture. The next thing is say, don't dare to be free. Mm-hmm. I think the whole thing is an assault on freedom, Mm-hmm. Don't you dare be free. Mm-hmm. So whether it's an insult on religion, a personal prosecution, but what they are taking away is freedom. And I think maybe this is the question must really, should we defend freedom at all costs? Mm-hmm. Because that's the seed of growth and well-being. Or we should barter freedom. Like comedians, I think you are the front line, you are the last line of defense. That only through that means, like when I see you come up and play that Dato, the YB, and also I like her, the glamour. The last time she came out glamorous, I'm like, oh my God. She came out with stuff and I wish I brought my camera.
Curry spice.
And I'm telling you, I'm married, but I kind of like her. But
It's strange, curry spice
But the
has an effect on
politician-
people.
I wish your mother was here. She would love it. The politician, I tell you, I was blown away from, I just came back from the States and I'm looking at her, I'm like, this lady is courageous. You're the front line. But the thing is, it's sad they leave you alone there. No? You're supposed to be supported. You are the carrier of freedom. Like sometimes, I wish I met, Robin Williams and a few other comedians I met. I said, you have no idea what you're doing. You're the front line. Once you go, the freedom is gone. Once I cannot make fun of it, it's over,
Yeah.
But the thing is, right now in Malaysia, last year, like this comedy club, I'm sure
You see,
you
I'm
heard.
still panicking when you bring the word Malaysia up,
Okay, we're okay. We're
She's
okay.
braver. Go for sorry.
Last year, I'm sure you saw about Crack House Comedy Club
2
that
years
got
ago, yeah.
it was 2 years ago. And in Malaysia, like the arts, it seems like this suppression is getting more and more and more. It's harder and harder. Last year, somebody made a joke in a comedy club and they shut down the comedy club. They arrested the owner of the club and it scared everybody. But I think, with the given situation in Malaysia, it seems, I feel like it's getting worse for the arts. It's harder and harder. How do you see, how do we defend it
Abshay,
with the
interrupt you a bit.
situation?
I want to insert this in.
Yeah.
I'm asking, gadai, in Malay they call it gadai, that means to pawn. Is it okay to gadai our freedom? I want as a collective, I want to put this question out. Is there anything worth defending than our freedom? Because I'm persuaded that give up your freedom, I let you live. If my freedom is gone, I don't know why I'm living.
But I think that what my question is that, look at what happened to this owner of this club. This was his business. It was gone. He was arrested. He has a wife. He has kids. In order to defend his freedom and his belief and his art, what is the cost? Of course, I feel like the cost is getting more and more. How do you foresee it?
No, what are the
growing,
rest of the people
changing?
doing? He got arrested. for
Everybody,
whatever.
people, came around him, but
Well, actually, what happened was it wasn't he made a joke. It was somebody came in and hijacked his comedy club to do something that insulted Islam.
so she basically wore a tudung and she took
She
it
took
off.
off her tudung, she took off all her clothes until she was wearing just a very skimpy outfit, and then she recited verses from the Quran.
Yeah.
So she did it deliberately to create trouble online.
To go
then,
viral.
because of that, the club got investigated, and then, of course, usual online warriors then found some comedy clips that he had done many years ago. He's Malay. He regularly makes fun of his own people, and he makes fun of this country, as many comedians do, right? And so as a result of that, then there was so much kind of hate against him online. The government, of course, as usual, overreacted. But I do agree that, we were hopeful that this Madani government would be more in tune with our desire for freedom. I do believe that we were not just asking for free and fair elections for Bersih. We weren't just asking for Najib to go. We were saying, actually, we need to understand, ourselves in past the labels of race and religion. We need to think in humanitarian terms. We need to think in terms of our freedom. And, and for our prime minister who was incarcerated, you would have thought that that's a pretty important thing. And I know, of course, politically, he doesn't have just his own party there. He's having to balance with a party who has their own agenda. There's a fear that a religious party is going to come in and take over power. So it's become deeply conservative in many ways because they're afraid of losing power. Right. So I think I think more performances have been shut down in the last few years.
The past 2 years.
The Vibes Festival, Good Vibes Festival coming up is also is now not happening because of the coronation. When people were saying, they're two different things. Why can't we have both things happening at the same time on the same day? So there's a growing conservatism because there's fear. So there's lack of bravery. Really? But of course, politicians are always thinking about the next election. They're not thinking about actually always good governance. Next election trumps good governance because they always think, give us 4 more years and then we'll get there. And they could be right in some ways. You can't just change a country overnight. So they're playing a long game. But in the meantime, as they play their long game, again, it's going back to the Wayang Kulit, there's all these squabbles by those with power, but who suffers? We do. And our freedom gets taken away.
Right.
But in fact, I agree with you. I think freedom is the most important
thing that we should.
And I think it's what everybody wants more than anything else, right? So the whole idea of like angin in Malay culture and or chi, prana, is that when you cannot breathe, and when you cannot breathe, you get sick,
right?
And when you get sick, it's because you feel oppressed. Right. And what else is that except that a taking away of your fundamental freedoms to be?
Which is what Socrates said. You know, he was put to death for say, think for yourself. Think for yourself. An unexamined life is a useless life. The question this is why you are an inspiration to me. Somebody who's defending freedom. And the freedom can even be something, you are free to do something that I might not agree.
Yeah,
Yes,
and
As long as it doesn't violate me, as long as it keeps my freedom intact, you are free to do what you want to do. So maybe the question is, you say comedic bravery, right? That was a title. I'm saying comedic bravery is the last line of defense of freedom. The day that goes away, freedom is gone. Like the work I do, if there is no freedom, like I can do certain amount of work in this region. I still have to find a safer place where I can question things. Not that I have an accusation or an agenda. We are purely looking at something to see what works, what doesn't, what inspires a human being to live. And I think I always tell my students this, I said, first go and what do I say? I forget. I said, let life let you out. Find a way, life lets you out. That means find your freedom. Those days, how they found their freedom? They became monk. They threw everything away and they said, I'm not interested, you are free, but we can't do that. We can't do that. What is freedom?
Yeah.
And I think, are we an advocate of it?
Yeah.
She is.
Well, I think that's why we do find different ways to find our freedoms, right? I mean, one of the people I'm very inspired by is this a Mexican playwright from the 16th century. So her name was Sor Juana. She was an extremely intelligent woman and she was a great writer. But of course, she knew as a woman growing up in Mexico in the 16th century, her lot in life was to get married off. The church was getting more powerful and they began to be uncomfortable with what was going on in Mexico, and they sent somebody over to sort of control things a bit better. And they heard about this playwright. How come this woman is allowed to say these things? But in fact, she had been very clever. She knew that in order to find her freedom, she had to join the holy orders. So she became a sister. She became Sister Sor Juana, because in that space, she could have a library, she could have all the books that she wanted, and she wrote her plays. And the king of Mexico and the queen loved her work. But then later, when they sent the bishop from Spain, because Mexico was, of course, colonized by the Spanish, he came and he said, because at the beginning of the Inquisition in Spain, he came and said, no, even this space doesn't give you freedom because you should not be doing this in the house of God, right? Oh. So he then tried to put an end to all that. Right. So even when we try to find our safe spaces to be free in, those who want to oppress you will try to take those spaces away from you as well. So you have to constantly try and find out where your space can be.
No, I think you must constantly find people who back you up.
Yeah.
Yes.
You cannot leave her alone. I was so excited for you coming for this reason, in my own way to say, I'm standing here, I'm cheering, I see you, thank you.
Yeah, Joe, I'm seriously like what you do, it really means something to all of us.
If there's a word bravery in this country, out of many people that I'll put, Joe Kukathas is one of it. And you do the work I do in many sense, and I'm doing the work you do. You make people laugh. I maybe make them.
You make them cry, maybe.
I don't want to say I make them cry.
I believe crying is very important. I hope I make people cry as well.
No, I'm not a therapist.
Yeah. I think you laugh and you cry. That's the best reaction I could ever hope for.
I think one of the things I'm trying to celebrate, and I'm celebrating with Joe Kukathas, thank God I am not oppressed. Thank God there's freedom. Thank God there's a hope for me to think beyond what is limited.
No, and also because bravery is infectious. When we watch you do it, some part of us feels like, oh my God, I could do it too.
Yes.
You see, they must not make us barter our freedom for safety.
Yeah.
And we hold in condemning any politician, any people who use that as a means to right governance. Right governance. I was telling somebody from Sweden, I said, you got to be very careful. You guys got a lot of rules. But your rules are used to rule people. Your rules are not used to keep my freedom.
Yes. It's quite different.
Your rules are used to rule people. I said, be careful. They are beautiful country. I would like to emulate a lot of them. But I also say, be very careful. They're critical, I'm saying. You may use rules to rule people. Or you may use rules to hold everybody's freedom. If not, humanity cannot move forward without freedom. And I think I'm a bit sad to watch what is happening in America and many places in Europe. I'm like, what's going on?
It's interesting that kind of previous philosophers, like people like John Mills, right? When he talked philosophically, he talked about the pursuit of happiness, right? So that philosophically we understand that our purpose in life is to pursue happiness. And happiness doesn't just mean, being numb to pain. Happiness means it's a very positive force, right? To be happy. You can be happy in the face of terrible turmoil. You can be happy, because of course, as a human being, you're going to lose people that you love. You're going to go through difficulty. You're going to sometimes feel unhappy for you think no reason. But we pursue happiness as something, a right that people should have.
Right.
And if you take away people's freedom, their happiness also disappears with it.
Happiness means I'm ever expanding.
Yeah.
You are not the person yesterday. You are less than tomorrow. So happiness means I am in a state of expanding, growing. Even physical body is only healthy when growth hormone is high. One of the ingredients. So in order for me to continue growing, I must have freedom. That's why you said the healing. It was so beautiful when you talked about how the shaman comes and heal.
Yeah.
What they are saying is you are ill because you are not allowed to grow, and you can't grow because your freedom is taken away.
Yeah.
And I think, like, if I speak for Malaysia as a Malaysian, I think we must learn to respect people's freedom.
Okay, before we wrap up, it's coming to an end now, but we look at our country, the state it's in. Like you said, we had a lot of hope with the new government. Haven't quite lived up to at least what I thought, we're going to be in this like liberal
Utopia.
Malaysia. I was like so excited.
Right.
But what's the hope?
I think the hope is us.
Yes.
The hope has always been us, right? And you said that you recently went to a comedy festival, a comedy club, and people were talking very openly. I think, and I hope that, as you say, Bravery is infectious, and that more people get infected, and that more people say things which they shouldn't say. I think that's the hope. And that we should support people who do say things, even if we don't agree with them, as long as they, like for me, if those people wanted to take that cow's head and drag it through the streets, I cannot say don't do it. But I also want to I have my right to say, I think that's a really ugly thing that you're doing, right? So that we have a conversation. It's only when you're telling everybody don't say anything that repression builds inside, and you become angry at your society, you become angry where you are, because you cannot say what's on your mind, you cannot speak your truth, right? And so everything gets blocked right here, right? And that's a terrible situation.
Why the decision for you to go to your master's? I said, done. She's hitting an age of freedom here. She's frustrated. She's trying something, and she's 27, 20 years. And I can see her like suffocating, even though as much as we don't want to lose her. We got 2 daughters. One we got, one we lost to America. But and we were holding on to her and said, go. You know why? Anything more here, you'll become retard. Sorry to use that word. I shouldn't use that word.
That's not a woke word, but okay.
Okay, it's like you will retard your brain. You will conform. You will become dull. Then all you can do is survive. You lose inspiration. You cannot imagine. You are not expanding, and then all there is you need to find somebody to keep me safe.
I don't think it's about country, though. I mean, it's about your immediate environment, right? So that, and I think that especially as the world is getting more globalized, although I think the world always was globalized. And I think especially in the days when borders were more porous, that we don't find inspiration just in what's immediately around us, right? We find inspiration in a larger consciousness as well. And I think that you're only oppressed when you decide that I cannot. But listening to you, you don't sound like you've given up or that you think I can't go any further, I can't say what I want to say. And I think when you find yourself wanting to stop what you want to say, that's when you say, well, let me put my hand down and say it.
But also she needs the support system. Like what I'm saying, the lady needs to be supported in every way possible.
You
have to. No, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
For me, why do I go overseas or go to some places? I have a professor called Paul Fayed. I have a lot of these people. With them, many things can be challenged without it becoming offensive.
Yes.
So I said, go find your freedom bring it back.
Like I always,
That's lovely. Bring it back. Yeah.
like 2 years ago, I was
Hopefully.
at this raid at Rex KL. It was a drag show, and
Right.
there were tons of drag queens, and there were people in costumes and all of that, cross-dressing everywhere. And the raid happened, and you know they rounded up all the queens, and I remember thinking, I gotta get out of here. I can't be here. Then I was like, wait, they're standing here. How can I not? How can I'm literally just I'm not in trouble. I'm non-Muslim. I'm cisgender standing here. And I was like, no, we have to stay. And then when they walked out, the cat walked out, and everybody cheered and screamed for them. And the cops were telling us all to shut up, and nobody did. And I was like, okay, we still got this. Like we still have each
Yes.
other here.
Yes.
And was very hopeful.
Yeah.
I think governance need a pushback of the guards of freedom. In order to govern, they need to do something, but I think there should be a counter force at all time, keeping us honest. And that's what you do. And hopefully that's what I do intellectually. There should be a pushback. If not in the name, like what they are promising you is you are safe. Do you know North Korea got lost by them promising you 2 meals with meat? They gave up their freedom for 2 meals with a meal. That's it. That's the deal. So they gave up their liberty for survival, and that should never ever happen. Maybe the message of this show is, if people are listening, would you be a advocate for freedom? Would you at least press like? Would you at least cheer on? Would you at least support?
But you bring up something very important, of course. It's in a way easy to talk about those things when you have 2 meals with meat.
Right.
But if you don't have that and somebody offers you that,
Right.
and you're thinking about yourself and your child, you will say yes because
Agreed.
of that. But then once you have a full belly, then you can start to be brave. And I think many of us here do have full bellies, so then we can afford to be brave. And you be brave for the person who cannot be brave.
Yes.
You are always
Yes.
you're always an ally to somebody. You
And
advocate with somebody.
They will always bring you to a state that you beg for 2 meals with meat, and that is manufactured.
Yeah, of course.
That is not accidental. That is their plan, their play.
That poverty is manufactured.
Poverty. Like in America, now I was reading the other day, people, they have a retirement crisis. You know what's the conclusion? Nobody can retire. What do you think that man is going to do at 65, 75? They can't retire. The whole thing is busted out. And I am suspecting, as much as they will say it accidentally happened, I'm saying they're deliberately making it happen. It's a warning for the next generation to say, buck up, follow.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Malaysia. It's like, we live in a bubble. Like, you know, if you just go on the outskirts, there's still so much fight just for survival. And that it's on the backs of those people that we are like,
as
the
much as
political
we say
system
this,
is the way it is.
I opt out to come back to Malaysia because I think it's a beautiful country. It has hope. It has a future.
Yeah.
I'm fighting for that. I've traveled everywhere. I've stayed a lot of places. I think this culture still...
We're
there is
Malaysian lah.
We're Malaysian. No, there's so much beauty. I grew up with a Muslim martial art master, with a Chinese fishing teacher and hunting. I grew up in that. So I am not racist. I love this. Maybe what we are doing is we are the front line, and hopefully we push back, because somebody to have power will want to take away my freedom. And I think it's worth defending. Right? And I think Joe Kukathas is the frontline fighter for that. Hey, today I'm just celebrating Joe Kukathas. It's not about DV, it's about I'm a big fan. That good?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Joe.
I don't know quite what to say to that, but just thank you.
No. I'm a fan. I'm my wife and a lot of people I know. It's not just a fan, and I'm like, what? There is hope. Somebody says these things. I'm like, even though in a very comedic way, in a dark room. So when we are laughing, we are not seen. We are looking. We are clapping. We are not seen. You are the only one in trouble.
Right.
But I think, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.